Hello and welcome back to Tinker Talks Guns. Today we're going to talk about the Smith & Wesson 32 double action safety hammerless, called by them the new departure because it was a departure from their previous revolvers, which even the top breaks had always had exposed hammers and could be fired single or double action, or just single action. And these are double action only and have completely concealed hammers. They are of the top break auto-ejecting variety, as you would expect for the period and for Smith & Wesson. And rather interesting revolvers. This is a first model, which was made from 1880 to 1882, and they changed them fairly quickly for reasons that will become more obvious in the tabletop. In fact, let's go to the tabletop and have a closer look. The 32 new departure is quite a petite gun because this is a normal size trigger guard and it looks huge on this gun. But as you can see with it in the hand, it's really quite petite. Now, this being a first model, it has a 3.5-inch barrel. Later models, they offered barrels from standard 2 to 3.25 inches, and occasionally you see 5 or 6 inch guns. But for these, I think the only thing they offered them in for the first model was the 3.5-inch barrel. And one of the things that they changed very quickly, because they started making these in 1880, and by 1882 they were making the second model with a completely different locking system. And you can see why, because to activate this, you have to push this down to unlock the gun, and then you have to pull the barrel assembly out from under your thumb to get it to eject. And as you can see, it is auto-ejecting, as you would expect. So this is far from optimal and a little bit of a pain in the butt. Now, they rectified this on subsequent models. This is a 38 double action safety hammerless fourth model. And they have a simple T-bar lock that you just push up and keep right on going, and everything works. Bob's your uncle. And, it's a lot simpler and more elegant. Also, the way the cylinder is retained is from a little nub on the bottom of the T-handle. So to remove the cylinder, all you have to do is lift up that handle and unscrew the cylinder. Or screw it back on in this case. So, very simple, very convenient. This rather less so. And this bar on the top is actually the cylinder release. You have to push that in and then pull back to unscrew it. Because the catch is attached to this bar. Altogether, a less useful and simple and satisfactory solution. Now, one advantage the first model has is that the sights are not tragically bad. You actually have a full width, decent blade with a nice, deep, well-defined square notch. Whereas on later guns, you just have this little nub on the T-bar of the lock that is quite tiny and has a none too well-defined U-shaped notch. So, but on the whole, I have to say mostly the changes from this gun were improvements. It is a little annoying to try and hold this down while you're removing the cylinder, and this is just, what were they thinking? And why is removing the cylinder important? Because when these guns were introduced, there was no smokeless powder, and you have to clean black powder guns a lot. And this one is in really quite decent shape. It's no surprise that it's 140 years old from its condition. But it's really not bad. And this silver metal, I suspect a nickel-plated front sight. Seems very, very tall, but the gun actually does shoot decently to point of aim. And the sights are useful enough that you can actually aim it. Now, I have trouble with this because I have huge meat hook hands, and this grip is really seriously not designed for my hands. And in fact, when I hold this gun securely and point it, I'd be pointing over someone's head at as close as 5 yards or so. So really, it does not point intuitively for me with this grip. But I'll probably change that. It's just a grip. Strangely, well, they already made a .32 double action, which had a very different mechanism, and the trigger looked quite different. You would have expected them to keep the same style grip frame on the double action safety Hammerless 32, but they didn't, because that grip frame would have ended about here, which is almost even with the bottom of the trigger guard, and it would have made a very silly grip. So they made this size. Now, you might think it would have been logical to make it the same size as the ones on the 38, and maybe it would have been, but that's not what they did either. At least on the first model, this is an in-between grip size. And I think it may be unique to this model. I'm not sure. It also has a quest for additional safety, the Magic Grip Safety, which seems to barely move, but does in fact solidly block the trigger from operating. And as for the trigger pull on this gun, it's really interesting. If you just pull through, it's not heavy, quite smooth. Now, I have difficulty because the gun does not fit in my hand properly. But, very nice. And it has such a distinct stoppage right here, like a wall. And I can't help but wonder if that's deliberate. Because once you hit the wall, you can pull the trigger as if it were a single action, and it's very crisp and very short with no over travel. So it almost seems deliberate as a way of giving you the ability to make more precise shots with more careful aim, which is clever, especially since it doesn't interfere with the straight through rapid trigger pull. So, interesting bit of history and a nice little shooter. The story of the development of the new Departure is that one of the Wesson brothers read an account of a child accidentally shooting themselves or someone else and wanted to make a child-safe gun. And I suspect it's just marketing. I mean, this is laudable. But if that was the goal, they failed completely. Because I am pretty sure few 3-year-olds would have any trouble at all pulling this trigger. Because it's not light, it's not heavy, and it's quite smooth. The grip safety similarly was thought to provide some additional level of safety. Anyway, this was missing from my collection because I have one of my favorite snubbies, the 38 double action 4th model safety Hammerless, and I have a 32 double action, but I did not have a 32 double action safety Hammerless. And so I was in Pintos talking to Chris and made the mistake of mentioning that this was the last top break I really was interested in for my collection. And he said, "Oh, we have some on Gunbroker," and called Diane, and she took it off Gunbroker. And at that point, what could I do but buy it? Darn. And I paid $175 for this, which, is really in pretty decent shape for that price. Pintos tends to have good prices. And prices on these are all over the place. You get some people who think they're worthless and sell them for $120. And you get others who think they're gold and try to sell them for $500 to $1,200. And I got nothing. But I was pretty happy to pay $175 for this because prices have been going up, and that was a pretty reasonable price. Anyway, and I have shot it, as you've seen. I do like shooting it, despite the, what for me are quite terrible grips. Yeah, there's practically no recoil, a little 32. And it's just a really nice old gun, a piece of history. And it's 140 years old, but it still does everything it's supposed to, and it does it very well. And you got to admire that. Anyway, if you like the video, please click like and subscribe. If you'd like to support me more materially, there is super thanks on YouTube, or there's a link below to my Patreon account, and where you could kick $1 a month my way or whatever. Everything costs money: ammunition, primers, the guns. It all adds up. And I'm a man of modest means. So if you can help out, it would be much appreciated. Anyway, I hope this finds you well. Stay safe, take care, and we'll talk to you again real soon.